Those windows, some have theorized, at least one was used by the government, gunman rather. Some have theorized that he got a large enough room to be able to have two shooting angles,
Stephen Paddock, who lived in Mesquite, Nevada, also had worked for the federal government from 1975 to 1985. They're already saying that he killed everybody at the festival. Case closed, guys. Case closed. Suicide by self-inflicted gunshot wound, even though he has a shot to the chest. So after working for the federal government, he worked for 6 years as the Internal Revenue Service. So he worked for the IRS. Then he was a federal auditor. And then he focused on defensive contractors. Paddock also worked 3 years as an internal auditor for a company that he later merged from LockHeed Martin. His work career after this period is not entirely clear. A FOIA information that he had done some work with NASA as well.
It didn't take me long to realize when I saw the location. Here's what I believe. I'm going to lay out my theory and thesis first.
Okay.
And so people, if you're watching, this would be a good time to share. Because I think what I'm about to say is going to make so much sense to you. It should scare you a little bit, but it's going to make a lot of sense because I know this particular area so well. I know the specifics of it, and the particular location is so important.
Yeah.
There's a coincidence in there that is not a coincidence. What I'm going to tell you is this. My thesis and my theory is, at first I said false flag.
Mm-hmm.
But then I looked at it and I was like, if it's a false flag, this is the all-time worst false flag. White guy with a bunch of guns shoots at white gun rights supporters,
right? Yeah.
Right? Country music. Mm-hmm. Shooting at people who like guns. Even Dan Bilzerian was there, right? And he's always showing off his guns.
Yeah.
So I said, so what is this? What is this? I am convinced now that this was a in-the-field, live-fire weapons test.
Huh.
I believe that it was a weapons test of a drone, small arms, capable drone.
Wow.
Okay? We're going to go over all of the pieces of this. First, we're going to go over why the official story falls apart, some weirdness in the official story. Then we're going to go over all of the pieces of why I say drone. Okay?
Okay. Cool.
So let's just jump right into it, right?
Jump into
first thing we said was these windows, right?
Yeah.
You would think, had he busted out a window, you will notice the one thing that we are not seeing. Now, first, there are plenty of videos. You can go to videos. We're going to show a map of where they show that where they're saying that he was firing from.
Yeah.
In none of the videos, when you're hearing the gunfire, do you see muzzle flashes coming from that location.
I was trying to figure that out because I was watching a couple of the videos. And
you do not see muzzle flashes, and it's going to show the exact room that they say that it was. 2. By this time, what should we see? We should see a telephoto lens picture of that room, and we should see the window either knocked out or drilled through. Because he either shot through the window and blew the window out as he was shooting. Or he had already pre-drilled the holes. Those would be visible with a telephoto lens from Las Vegas Boulevard. Have we seen this? No. So 10 guns or 8 guns. Here's what I found interesting. 2 platforms set up to shoot from. And that part is so weird, okay?
Doesn't make any
2
sense.
platforms and cameras to see police coming. Now, we know that police used explosives to blow the door open. Where would he have put it? They weren't cameras in the hallway. What, he set up cameras in the fucking hallway? No. I know this hotel back to front. You can't slide anything but as thin as a paper under that doorway. Where would he have mounted the cameras outside? And people wouldn't have seen cameras sticking out from this door?
Yeah.
No.
fucking weird.
Where were the cameras pointed? The cameras were pointed down onto the pavilion. Why is that important? That's very important.
Huh.
It's very important. Filming the carnage from that particular angle. Very important. Now, 2 platforms and 8 guns. If you're going to do the maximum amount of damage, you're going to have 1 platform. We're going to show the map of this. 1 platform that represents the absolute best shooting position, and the gun that you feel the most comfortable with, and a ton of ammo for that gun. No sniper is going to have 8 to 10 guns.
Right.
But the 8 to 10 guns, the cache of weapons, makes sense if this was a weapons test. And we'll get into that. Let's show where it's so telling and important what is over there. And the thing is, I know what's over there. I'm one of maybe even the few people in Vegas who knows what's over there. But it's so important. And the people who are conspiracy theorists right now are about to freak the fuck out about what is over there. So let's show these maps. Here's the manual slideshow. Let's do this. Okay. So now on this map, you can kind of get a better idea. We're seeing the vantage point of where supposedly this shooting took place, where the room is, okay? So what you can see is toward the middle left here, you see the pavilion, you see the stage. This is the stage that Jason Aldean was on. So now let's go to, or this might actually be Mandalay Bay did this to show what it looks like from the rooms looking down on a concert, perhaps.
Right.
Go to the next one. Okay, now we're going to see what is over there. Here's a very important thing. So in the lower left of your screen, that little it's got 3 towers there. That's Mandalay Bay. Towards the middle, a little offset left, you see the pavilion. It's the blue top with the 2 sides against it. Okay, where that guy turned was he turned toward the bottom right-hand corner. Now, this particular location, of all the fucking places in the world, when I saw where this was, I fucking freaked out. Because down in the bottom left corner is, you see, that's part of the airport. There's hangars there. But there's a very important thing down in that bottom left corner. Go ahead and go to the next one.
Oh, shit.
Go to the next one. This is showing that. So I'll tell you a little story. If you look at up in the top right, you see a 3-story building there that's got a little private runway. And you can actually see, I believe that might be the Embraer plane. Anyway, that is Ernie Moody's private hangar. Now, Ernie Moody is basically the guy who invented what we know as multiplayer video poker, the things that are in every single one of these video pokers. If you go to a bar in Vegas or Reno, Atlantic City, anywhere, even Indian casinos, this dude he has the patent and all of that. So his company makes about $25 million a month in royalties. Crazy. Now, a friend of his is also a friend of mine, and one day invited me out to Ernie Moody's hangar, which, mind you, is that thing up there in the top right. Now, that's where he keeps his Embraer private jet. He also has an amazing collection of cars in there, really rare cars, including a fully functional Batmobile with real machine guns, which is kind of awesome. So it's a 3-story hangar. It's got like all these old school games. It's got an apartment in there. The offices for his company are in there. And in the back, you can kind of see there's a green area. So what he's got back there is he's got a putting green, some other things where he goes. When this friend of mine took me out there, he said, well, you see this big wall that they built around this area here. And he said, you see those planes? Do you recognize those planes? And I said, I really don't. Like, he's like, you see how they've got the red stripe around them, and you see these armed guards walking around. And I was like, I don't know what this is. Now, some people may recognize what this is, but let's go ahead and, why don't you show this Janet video?
Or navigation charts. But there's rumored to be a secret airline just for transporting Area 51 employees. The airport allegedly lies on an unmarked airfield, completely hidden from view, unless you know where to look.
We think that these are the planes that take people to Area 51.
See Mandalay Bay back
These airliners?
Exactly, and it's called Janet Airlines, which is pretty amusing. And we're talking about, hundreds of employees.
Janet Airlines actually has 6 737s carrying approximately 190 passengers each and 5 smaller jets. That's a fleet capable of transporting 1,200 people a day to a place that does not exist. No one knows why the name Janet was chosen, but some say it stands for Joint Air Network for Employee Transportation, while others claim just another non-existent terminal.
Okay, so what we've got is in directly the opposite, almost exactly the same distance on the other side. So you got Mandalay Bay north, you go south almost exactly the same distance from the pavilion, and you have the government secured airfield that is the place where employees go to be delivered to Area 51, top secret government weapons testing facility. Right there, exactly where the guy turns to. This is what made me say, this was a drone attack. Why would you need a setup where the guy was set up high? It's at about the perfect level that you would put a smaller drone. Now, it's a smaller drone. It's not like the Predator drones. It's a smaller drone, the type of thing that could be man-portable into a battlefield, the type of thing that you could take into a country that had an air force. And you would have a secure facility to stage it and launch it, and to return it back behind a giant wall on an airfield so that you would know there would be no air traffic in that area because it's too close to the airport. So even there can't be helicopters flying overhead of that might see it. It's dark. You can hide it behind that thing. Not only that, 8 guns. Well, why wouldn't you try out a whole bunch of different weapons on 8 different drones? And you can fly it in from Area 51 in the cargo hold of one of those airplanes, and you can fly it right back out there in the morning, on Monday morning when you take the people back out.
Wow.
Now, what kind of drone is this? What kind of drone is this? Let's look at this drone. Here's a story. This is just from July, from Defense One newsletter. A breakthrough in drone design gives a glimpse into the future of urban warfare. The Israeli military is buying small multi-rotor drones modified to carry a machine gun, a grenade launcher, and a variety of other weapons to fight tomorrow's urban warfare battles. Their maker, Florida startup Duke Robotics, is pitching the TIKAD drone to the U.S. military as well. Lieutenant Colonel Raziel Razi Atuar, a 20-year veteran of the Israeli military and a reservist in the Israeli Special Forces, co-founded the company in 2014 along with a paratrooper turned robotic engineer and another IDF buddy. He says he was tired of watching his comrades die in chaotic street battles that also sometimes took the life of civilians. You have small groups of adversaries. Now, this is a quote. Listen to this. Quote, "You have small groups of adversaries working within crowded civilian areas, using civilians as shields, but you have to go in. Even to get just a couple of guys with a mortar, you have to send in a battalion." This, I'm going to show you the type of drone that I believe was being tested. I believe there were multiples of them. Go ahead and show this. It's called the TIKAD. Go ahead and show this TIKAD vid.
What if we
Where's
told
the
you
sound?
the future is now? Robots are replacing combat soldiers. Unnecessary casualties are becoming part of the past.
Go ahead and turn it up.
Minimizing collateral damage and uninvolved casualties. Duke Robotics presents TIKAD, the future soldier. With TIKAD, the future battlefield has arrived. A fully robotic battalion, capable of identification and surgical neutralization of hostiles in the field, can now be deployed to places human soldiers can't reach, or simply shouldn't have to go. TIKAD is able to adjust for the right place and time. The TIKAD robot is designed to identify, target, and engage in real-life scenarios. TIKAD takes the full recoil of the weapon discharge, compensates for its force, and quickly readjusts to stay on target and in the fight. The Defense Department chose Duke as winner of the 2016 Terror Combat Competition. The company is in the process of implementing orders from the Israeli forces. Every year in the U.S., more than $150 billion is spent in R&D and acquisition of better solutions to secure our troops. The total global aerial drone market by itself is expected to reach $10 billion in 2017. Over the next several years, the military robotic and drone sector will continue to lead all other sectors in drone spending. Invest in Duke Robotics. TIKAD, the robot that will transform the way conflicts are being solved.
Wow.
So this is a perfect example of the type of drone that I believe that this thing was. So what do we have? Here's the situation that we've got. Lone wolf who dies. Supposedly he's got 8 to 10 weapons in his room, 2 shooting platforms, supposedly. How does he bust out a window? Does he drill a hole in a window? How does he shoot out of a window that doesn't open? Mandalay Bay's windows don't open. We have videos of that exact area where supposedly his room was. There are no muzzle flashes. Supposedly there are cameras that are set up. According to a tweet by Norm Clark, he's got cameras set up in his room to see the police coming. But they're clearly not set up in the hallway. We have a military facility associated with Janet Air, which is the government-run airline that takes people out to Area 51, a weapons testing range, fully secure, that is about the same distance on the opposite side of, so Mandalay Bay being Mandalay Bay being west, this being to the east, almost on the exact same line. We have a guy filming the stage that as soon as the shots go off, he turns his camera because he thinks that it's in the opposite direction of Mandalay Bay. So we have all of this going on, and we happen to have drones coming out that hold small arms and can do this. Now, if you were going to really test these in a live scenario, what you would want is a bunch of people, and then you would want to pick out specific targets and see if these things could hit it. Furthermore, why Las Vegas would be the place to do this drone thing is because the drones are flown out on Nellis Air Force Base. That's where the drone squadron is that remotely flies all the drones. So you would want these things to be jacked into the existing systems. You would want it to be close enough. There's a great movie with Ethan Hawke where he's playing, it's relatively new, he's playing one of these drone pilots. You have all of these things lining up. The other thing is this woman who was a person of interest, now is not a person of interest. When I saw her name, Mary Lou Danby, I immediately thought Filipino.
Yeah.
She's got the Filipino name. Turns out she is Filipino. Danby is not a Filipino last name. And she's of a particular age. She was married to a military guy. Promise. There's a military connection. And I would not be surprised if it's not Air Force. And she travels a lot. There's too many things lined up in this whole thing. And especially the fact that it's like very confusing about he leaves no note, none of this, right? I do think this is the scenario. I do think that particular weapons system is exactly what they would want right now because there's a lot of things about collateral damage and whatnot. They don't want to be firing these Hellfire missiles. The other thing about it is this is the type of thing that you could use in a conflict with North Korea.
Right.
To take out their top guys, right? You smuggle it in because it's pretty much man-portable. You saw it. It's not much bigger than the gun itself. You smuggle this thing in, and then you just set it somewhere. The guy can leave, and it's remotely piloted by satellite from here. All you got to do is drop it off, attach a weapon onto it, fucking put the ammunition, and woo, this thing's up, and brah,
It could probably even fly long distance, because I know when we were playing with some drones.
Oh,
here,
dude, yeah. I mean, I'm sure this thing's got some range on it.
Right.
I mean, it's probably got 20 miles or something like that. And it's like, it also is one of those where if the other side doesn't know that you have it operational, they're going to be looking for, because it was small arms fire coming from close, they're going to be looking for.
Thank you, Ken. All right. For those of you who may not know, I'm Sheriff Lombardo of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Today, I'm going to give you an update where we currently are with the investigation. And then I'll give you some insight to where we're going with the investigation, and then I'll be happy to answer a small number of questions. Okay, so in the days since our last briefing, investigators from the LVMPD, along with many agents from the FBI and ATF, have continued working around the clock on the 1 October shooting. Today I'll provide you with some information, but mostly I hope to clarify or provide more updated information on some of the details that have been reported in the media. A number of you have already reported that the brother of the suspect is in town, and yes, he is. We are in contact with him, along with other family members. I will not discuss what came out of those interviews, but every piece of information we get is one more piece of the puzzle in this case. Last week, we talked about the single person whose action helped pinpoint the location of the suspect, and that was the Mandalay Bay security guard Jesus Campos. As you might imagine, Mr. Campos was not only injured when he was fired upon, as he did his room check about the door alarm down the hall from the suspect's room, but he was also extremely shaken up by what happened to him. He was able to confirm for us exactly what he heard and saw in the moments before he was shot. Mary Lou Danley, the suspect's live-in girlfriend, we are still speaking with Miss Danley about the suspect's movements, gun purchases, and anything else we need to know about him and how he had planned his assault. And who he came in contact with during the planning phase. We have uncovered no evidence to show there was a second shooter. We have uncovered over 200 instances of the suspects traveling throughout Las Vegas, and he has never been seen with anyone else. We have no evidence or intelligence that the suspect was linked or had affiliation with any known terrorist groups or ideologies. In coordination with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, a comprehensive picture is being drawn as to the suspect's mental state, and currently we do not believe there is one particular event in the suspect's life for us to key on. We believe he decided to take the lives he did, and he had a very purposeful plan that he carried out. So where are we at with the property retrieval? As of yesterday, the personal effect. What was the question, ma'am?
Can I also ask, in the days...
What was the original question?
What time he got sustained the injury?
Well, it's fairly simple for me to obtain. Confirm that.
Sheriff, are you saying that the security guard crap? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't know where you're getting your numbers, but you are correct. He was injured prior to the mass volley of shooting.
So to follow that, he's shot at just about 10 o'clock. The shots into the crowd begin at 10:05 and go on for, we said at one point 11 minutes, but 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So can you give us what you think?
Okay, I don't want to get in. I appreciate what you're saying, Ken.
Receipts that have been obtained from the valet security system.
Ma'am, that's not how we conduct this service, okay? If I'm presented with a question.
Because the FBI has reported that.
That's not how I conduct press conferences, ma'am.
Has the official timeline changed? Because
please stop asking your question. There's a decorum that we have here. And I will finish Mr. Ritter's question.
Thank you. So if Officer Campos or security guard Campos was shot at 9, just before 10 o'clock, and the shot's out the window, as you described, then there were two about...
So let me help you with that, Ken, because you picked up on it. Yes, the timeline associated with the original shot and Mr. Campos has changed through investigation, as I have conveyed to you from the very beginning. And your zest for information and my zest to ensure the public safety and the calming of their minds is some things are going to change. Now, they are minute changes. Okay, there's not this all-encompassing answer associated with the information that we presented before. In other words, it's not completely inaccurate. But what we have learned is Mr. Campos was encountered by the suspect prior to his shooting to the outside world. Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff, you referenced the comprehension profile that's being drawn up. Can you talk about what threads your department is looking at regarding the shooter's mental condition and how important that is to your investigation?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by thread.
Like what avenues are you guys going down looking at his mental?
Well, as you can imagine, anything that any mental health or medical help he's had throughout his life, we're attempting to obtain any and all information associated with that. Additionally, the behavioral analysis unit from the FBI is on the ground here locally, and we're attempting to utilize their expertise in discerning those matters. What I will provide with you is behavioral analysis is in LA also, Los Angeles, while interviews with Ms. Danley are being conducted.
Do you have any idea why Mr. Campos was near that room when he got shot prior to the actual...
Yes, we had an alarm associated with an open door. It was not the suspect's open door, it was another. Yes.
Were there any other writings discovered in the room, either numbers or otherwise?
I'm not aware of any. I personally am not aware of any.
Sheriff, were there any diagnoses that he had that you can share? Anything about his? You talked to the medical thing as part of the investigation. Is there anything he was diagnosed with or was taking that you can comment on?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Was he diagnosed with any conditions, or was he taking any?
No, we don't have a complete, comprehensive evaluation of his mental condition. We will provide that as we become aware of it.
Sir, so after Mr. Campos was shot, before the mass shooting happened, did he alert security? Did they know? I'm just wondering if there's was any delay in his reporting? Or
No. He immediately, upon being injured, notified security of his situation. In close proximity of Mr. Campos being shot, there was also a maintenance worker that presented himself on the 32nd floor, and Mr. Campos prevented him from receiving any injuries.
Sheriff, do you think the suspect's engagement with Mr. Campos maybe sped up the timeline of the shooter?
I would not make that assumption. I'm not privy to that.
There's actually two questions.
What was Mr. Paddock doing before the shooting? Is there any evidence that he was gambling that same night, or do you have any video evidence of what he was doing before?
We have a pretty comprehensive timeline prior to the shooting, but more importantly, it's up in the public forum. He was gambling the night before. I do not want to disclose his actions up to the shooting because that's part of the investigation.
To end Mr. Paddock's actions, what caused him to stop shooting out the window? Do we know?
We do not know at this point.
And then to follow, you have said earlier you believe he had an escape plan. Do you still think that?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a matter of discussion out there, whether what I said is accurate or not. And what I am comfortable with saying is what I believe. Mr. Campos, not Mr. Campos, I'm sorry, the suspect. I don't want to say the suspect's name. I will call him the suspect. We know that he attempted to shoot at the fuel tanks. We know that he had some personal protection equipment in the room. We know that the car that was down in the parking garage still contained binary explosives. So I would be comfortable in saying, which I believe, depending on the splash he made during the shooting, would it enable the first responders to be directing their attention in other locations, which would enable Mr. Paddock to just leave the hotel. And we do not know whether he had planned to cause additional harm outside of what occurred at Mandalay Bay.
Was there ever a trigger mechanism found that would have led to the car?
A trigger mechanism?
We talked about finding electronics in the room. We talked about
Oh, you mean something that would no, the explosives were not set up in order to detonate with a trigger.
So, Sheriff, is it your belief?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the security guard, and when did the police know that the security guard was shot? Before the gunshots at 10:05 p.m. or only after the active shooting began?
They weren't aware of him being shot until they met him in the hallway after exiting the elevator.
Sheriff, when did he check into the hotel? And what date did he check into the hotel?
The best of my recollection, we have information on the 25th. I had told you previously the 28th. We're trying to confirm his actions between the 25th and the 28th. I'm under the belief that he was not occupying the room between those days.
Sure. What medication specifically was he taking?
I already said that, ma'am. I can't answer that question now.
Can you address specifically, you said that you don't want to say the suspect's name. Can you just briefly talk about why that is?
Why? Because I don't want to sensationalize his actions. I believe if he doesn't have a name, nobody can relate to him.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
In the back.
In recent days, we heard reports about cell phones found in the suspect's room. How many cell phones were found, and was there any sort of indication that he might have been communicating with anybody?
Aaron, do you have that information?
I don't think it's prudent to give that out.
Okay. No, we don't have that number. I don't know the number personally.
Sure. You mentioned that something about how you had observed his movements over 200 times in the valley. Can you talk about where he was going, what he was doing?
No, I can't reach. I wish I could give you a comprehensive timeline and his movements. That would assist us in developing possible witnesses, but we're still running that down. It's still a really comprehensive evaluation of all the electronic equipment associated with this individual, and that's going to take quite some time. What I am proud of is how far we've gotten to this point. And yes, I'm frustrated. If you look in the public media, the perception that I am frustrated at the speed of this investigation, yes, I am. It isn't because nobody is not doing their job. It's because this individual purposely hid his actions leading up to this event, and it is difficult for us to find the answers to those actions. And that's why it's important for you to give me some deference, the FBI some deference, and the police department some deference to the ability to run out these leads. Now, I have noticed in the public forum several assumptions, unconfirmed statements, and actions of this individual put out there, and it makes it very difficult for us to follow the leads that we currently have when we're trying to chase our tail in other directions. And I have said this to you before. I appreciate all your help. You're a force multiplier for us because there's a lot of hidden pieces to this puzzle, but there's also a happy medium associated with that. And I will answer Mr. Ritter's question. That will be the last question.
That's a lot of questions. I know you've got questions. We learned yesterday that the FBI went again to the Mesquite house. Did the FBI also go back to Reno, that house there, and the vehicles? Are we recombing? Perhaps you can tell us if we're recombing evidence.
Yes, we are. The question was, is the FBI, along with LVMPD, revisiting the crimes or the personal property of the suspect? Yes, that is accurate. Along with the behavioral analysis detectives, they are also present, and maybe we can discern some additional evidence as a result of that revisit. Okay, thank you very much. And like I said previously, we anticipate the next press conference to be Friday. Barring any key evidence that we become aware of, we'll plan on Friday. Thank you very much.
It sounds like there's somebody on the ground that is shooting. And what was so bizarre about this is that Mandalay Bay was on our right. This creep was on the, 32nd floor. And the girl that was standing right beside me, maybe 7-8 inches behind me, got shot straight in her stomach, right above her belly button. Now, how does a bullet come straight down and make a left turn and hit her in the stomach? And I don't understand it.
Wait, hold on. I don't understand. So the hotel is on the right, but she got shot from the left?
She got shot straight in the center. We were facing due south. Mandalay.
So you were facing away from the hotel? Gail, I want to be clear. You were facing away from the hotel?
Our right shoulder would be facing Mandalay Bay.
Okay, on the right shoulder, there's the hotel. Now, your stomach is facing diagonal to that hotel. And you're saying the girl next to you is facing in the same direction as you and your husband?
Yes, we were both facing west. Direct.
Okay, so you're asking how could she get struck directly in her stomach from that direction when there was allegedly no shooter there?
Well, see, that's what's so bizarre, because I even thought that. Because how could a bullet be coming from our right, which was on our west? We're facing direct south. A bullet would have to come straight up and make a 90-degree left turn and go into her stomach.
Gail, has anyone from LA, Las Vegas Metro interviewed you?
Yeah, not from there, but I've had other interviews with, like, CBS.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kevin McMahill. I'm the Undersheriff for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and I am going to be providing you an update this afternoon on the Route 91 Music Festival mass murder. To date, we have run down well more than 1,000 leads in this investigation. While some of it has helped create a better profile into the madness of this suspect, we do not still have a clear motive or reason why. I can assure you that we are aware of all aspects of this case, to include the rumor, innuendo, and supposition by many in the public. And I get it. We all want answers. We have looked at everything, literally, to include the suspect's personal life, any political affiliation, his social behaviors, economic situation, and any potential radicalization that so many have claimed. We're also aware, of course, that ISIS has repeatedly claimed responsibility, which today I can tell you that we have no known nexus to. We have been down each and every single one of these paths trying to determine why, to determine who else may have known of these plans. We will continue to investigate each and every one of these areas, as well as all the tips and leads that continue to come in. We must remain focused solely on truth and fact. It's very easy to assume. We're collectively working with the FBI and many other partners to try to get there. At this time, I'll tell you again that we have no credible information to report to you as to motivation. We will not stop, and we'll keep you up to date as anything develops on that. I will tell you, though, that all of the rumor and speculation has not been helpful to our investigation. In the past, terror attacks or mass murder incidents, motive was made very clear in most of those cases, by a note that was left, by a social media post, by a telephone call that was made, by investigators mining computer data. Today, in our investigation, we don't have any of that uncovered. I wish we did. We will and are continuing to investigate with great tenacity and hope to arrive at an answer.
Okay, pause it.
Most of you also now know the name of the man.
Okay, so here's what we've got. Absolutely no. Don't need to go back to us. We'll do it with it here with just the voiceover. Absolutely no motive. This is what he's saying, and he's also saying we've gone down every single path. I think that's key. The other thing that's very key about this, now that we have it paused, Do you see anything that stands out to you about this shot right here? Is there anything that stands out to you about this shot?
Yeah, the guy in the background.
Yeah. What stands out? So that guy, I will tell you, because he speaks later, although I cut that piece because it's not important to this. He's been around. He's an FBI agent. So that's the head of the FBI that is investigating this. What do you find interesting about his body language?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say his body language is very telling.
What is his body language communicating to you?
That he's protecting something. That he's making sure that something does not get told.
Yes. He's there controlling this guy, right? Mm-hmm. He's there standing there. The closeness that he is to him. Mm-hmm. The way that he's got his hands held in front of him.
Even the look on his face.
The look on his face. Yeah. His body language is so important. The people who are watching, watch this, because exactly what Christian said, that's exactly what his body language said to me as well. That's one reason why I believe that the police, I do believe that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police believes that they know, and I believe that there are things that are being withheld from them. As he said, they've gone down every path that they could. Mm-hmm. I believe that there are paths that they're being prevented from. So let's continue on. He's going to talk about the security guard.
Mandalay Bay security guard who you've all named in the media, and I'll just reaffirm to you that Jesus Campos is a true hero. I can tell you now just a little bit more that I know about what he did that particular day. We now know that he was dispatched to what they call a door alarm on the 32nd floor. He went up there to investigate the open door, and as he was doing his job diligently, he came under fire by our suspect. As you know, he was struck in the leg. He turned around and retreated. He notified his dispatch, which was absolutely critical to us knowing the location, as well as advising the responding officers as they arrived on that 32nd floor. I can tell you that this was a remarkable effort by a brave and remarkable man. I want to say today that I don't think we've done a good enough job recognizing him and his actions, and for that I apologize. I just want to take the moment and clear the record that he's an absolute hero. There's also a couple of questions that...
Okay, so what we have now is that we know how he was discovered as being in that room was that the security guard went up there because there was an open door at one of the other rooms. Mm-hmm. So now, for those people who don't know about Las Vegas hotels, I know these hotels inside and out. So what I can tell you is the doors are heavy and they close automatically. Yeah. The only way that a door can stay open, there's basically one of two ways. Either one, the typical way that people leave it open is there's a door latch, mm-hmm. or you can, sometimes there's one at the bottom that if you close the door latch and then push the door over it, the door stays open. Or that if you turn the latch and then you close it, that the door stays, mm-hmm. the door will stay open. Now, I've done that before. And I've never had security come up. Right. So I don't know how long one of those doors has to be open before security goes.
I watched a clip with Steve when he was, and this is procedure of when.
Okay, go ahead. It's probably very similar at MGM.
Yeah, he mentioned that it's probably similar, but he said that if a door has not been opened in the casino for 12 hours plus, that they go investigate. So they go knock on the door.
What do you mean if it hasn't been opened?
Yeah, so if there's a do not disturb, or if the door if it's somebody is inside of the room, like if
for 12 hours
for 12 hours plus, that they would go and knock on the door and send room service.
So what we have here is the reverse of what the police are saying. They're saying that a door alarm is because a door is open. But like I say, I've done that, and I've never had security come, mm-hmm. and it's been there for a long time. What it sounds like we might be talking about in this case is no one's come out of that room for 12 hours.
Right.
This starts to get much more interesting. Although, to me, that seems silly because I know I've slept in a room at Wynn for longer than 12 hours and stayed in a room for longer than... Something's wrong.
Yeah, something doesn't make sense.
Because the other thing about it is that, like, as I say, I've been in and out of these hotels. I've never heard of this scenario that he's describing of the open door. And then for it to be in the exact hallway, just by chance, this is an inconsistency.
Yeah.
Right? So this is an inconsistency, but what it does do is it creates a scenario whereby we have ostensibly a live shooter in the room shooting out at a security guard at the specific time when the shooting is supposedly taking place. I think that's important.
It is.
I don't think that's a small thing. I think it's important. It's a fucking weird inconsistency in this whole thing. But it gives us at least a timeline. It gives us a timeline. Right. So let's go to the next inconsistency that I feel like is just being passed over, and even the police are like, oh, go ahead.
Continued to come in regards to this tannerite and what materials that we had. You all know we've given you this information about where we found the tannerite in the vehicle. Tannerite is a binary explosive, meaning that it's composed of two substances. We also had a significant amount of that tannerite as a finished product, and we had two chemicals of ammonium nitrate and aluminum powder that, when combined, make the finished product of tannerite. Sorry to tell you, I don't know what he was going to do with all of that tannerite. I wish I did, and we continue to try to find that information out. Okay, the question is, can we eliminate...
Okay, so now we have tannerite, this explosive, that both the explosive itself and the two components that are necessary to make this explosive are found in his car. And they have no fucking clue what he's going to do with this explosive. This explosive is an inconsistency.
Yep.
This explosive is a dead-end alley, right? So you got to think, this explosive ties to nothing. It was obviously put in the car for some reason. Who would have a vested interest in putting a blind alley, something that would distract a certain amount of investigators and push them in another direction, right? This, to me, looks like... sending somebody on a wild goose chase on purpose in a very cheap way, right? Very cheap. But one thing that we got to think about is tannerite, this particular, it's an individual who would know how to make an explosive.
Good point.
Person involved here is someone who knows how to make an explosive. Do we have any evidence that this guy was interested in explosives, that he had a chemistry background or anything like that? But it does speak to whoever put it in the car, doesn't it? It says that whoever put it in the car knows how to manufacture explosive weapons. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So now what I want to do is he's going to answer questions. And this is important. What you and I are going to do, he's going to answer questions. These question and answer things are quick. But so we've seen a little bit of him talking. We've seen a little bit of him giving a statement. Now, what's interesting is this is the undersheriff. They stopped allowing the sheriff, Joe Lombardo, to talk.
Right.
Now, Joe Lombardo, you'll recall, had said some things like, hey, man, we know... Come on, you really believe he didn't have help? Blah, blah, blah. He had said a whole bunch, he had let a whole bunch of things go. Right? And Joe doesn't get to talk anymore. Narrative has to be controlled. Now he's going to answer questions. And what I want you to look at while he's answering the question, more important than the answer to the question itself, is his body language and the body language of his FBI handler. So this first one is going to be about, it's a question about if there's an accomplice. Watch his body language and watch the body language of the handler.
Can we confirm whether there's an accomplice or not? I can tell you this, we're very confident that there was not another shooter in that room. What I cannot confirm to you today, and what we continue to investigate, is whether anybody else may have known about this incident before he carried it out. Right, the question is about the tannerite.
Okay. What did you see in that?
One, the FBI guy, I don't know his name, I don't want to say his name or anything, but the FBI guy was making sure that he said the right thing.
So he would make a statement, and the FBI guy would make a little nod.
Yeah, he would say, that's correct, and
You see that?
Yeah.
You catch that?
And almost with a little smirk, too.
And he hadn't been doing that throughout this whole process.
Right.
But it was almost like, yes, you gave the right answer. Now, what these are tells. These are micro expressions that people make that they don't even realize that they're making. Also, he's very nervous.
Yeah.
And you can tell that he's nervous because you're going to see him now answer about the tannerite where he's sure about the tannerite, and you're going to see how this answer differs from the last answer. So go ahead.
That we found, and whether we believe he was trying to make it into an IED, I can tell you we found it in the condition that it was, and it did not resemble an IED.
Pause. Okay, so you saw confident, hands in one place, not moving, not looking down, looking straight ahead. Confident. It's not an IED. I know for sure it's not an IED, right? This is a lie detector test right here. So let's go with this next one because this is interesting. This is about the video.
Question is, have we reviewed the video from the Mandalay Bay? I can tell you that there's voluminous amounts of video from many different locations. We have reviewed it, and we have not located any other person that we believe to be a suspect at this point.
So.
Same thing.
Fidgeting.
Right.
You see him adjust his gun belt. Right? Looks down. His handler nods his head. He says, we can tell you there's voluminous amounts of video. Handler nods his head, keeps nodding, continuously nodding. Obviously, that voluminous amounts of video is probably one of that handler's exact words. And that's why he's like, yes, you're saying the exact thing.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. Next, this is about a room key.
Question is do we know that anybody else used a room key for the hotel room, and we do not believe that happened?
Pause.
Question is,
handler's moving. Handler's nervous about this question, right? He's looking down. He looks down through almost the whole answer, right? About somebody using the room key. That was the two inconsistencies. There was an inconsistency of they found a phone charger that didn't match. And then that someone had used his room key when the car was out of the garage. Now, what people don't understand about this car out of the garage and somebody using the room key is that all the MGM properties have recently, it used to just be free self-parking. But now all the MGM properties, including Mandalay Bay, self-parking is pay.
You have to pay.
Now, when you pay, you go up to the machine, you press the button, the ticket comes out. Have you been in one of these?
Yeah.
What does it say? What does it say on the thing?
It has your license plate number.
License plate being checked.
Yep.
It associates your license plate with a timestamp of when you went into the garage and when you went out of the garage. So it came out, a report, and also all the room keys have a timestamp of when you go in and out of the room. Someone used his room key when his car was out of the garage. Now he's saying, oh, no, we don't have, that's got to get memory hold because that's a huge inconsistency. Okay. Now this last one is about whether or not he's a schizophrenic. Remember, people were saying, oh, he's an undiagnosed schizophrenic. Okay, what do the police say?
About the medical status, that is another aspect of the investigation we're keenly interested in, and we're continuing to investigate that.
Okay, that's it, period. So, they don't think he's crazy. Right, they don't have that. So here's what we've got. That's just the basics. From the body language, from what's being explained, what we do know is that the police have nothing. They have no motive. Now, there's been all of these articles that have popped up, CNN and all of this, and I've shared a few of them where they were like, why does it matter what his motive was? Why does motive matter? Right? So let's talk about, so people understand, why does motive matter? This is just throw this motive here. And I'll just read straight from it. This is why it matters. Means, motive, and opportunity. This from Wikipedia. In U.S. criminal law, means, motive, and opportunity is a common summation of the three aspects of a crime that must be established before guilt can possibly be determined in a criminal proceeding. Respectively, they refer to the ability of the defendant to commit the crime, the means, the reason the defendant committed the crime, the motive, and whether the defendant had the chance to commit the crime, opportunity. Opportunity is most often disproved by use of an alibi, which can prove the accused was not able to commit the crime, as he or she did not have the correct set of circumstances to commit the crime as it occurred. Some crimes are motiveless, however. However, providing motive can often make it easier to convince a jury of the elements that must be proved for a conviction. So, Christian, what we're talking about here is means, motive, and opportunity. Any prosecutor and any investigator, if they're looking for a suspect, are looking for means, motive, and opportunity. If there's absolutely no motive, you probably have the wrong suspect.
Right.
Now, motive for a particular crime may not be necessary if the person, for instance, had a previous record of committing such crimes. What we were talking about earlier is the idea that if a rape occurs in a neighborhood and on that block lives a registered sex offender with a history of rape, you at least go knock on his door.
Right, exactly.
At the beginning of it all, he's the prime suspect. He's not the prime suspect because you know anything about the means or anything about his opportunity. But you know that this is someone with a history of rape, so they have a motive. Motive is so important. Any investigator will tell you when a murder occurs, 9 times out of 10, the spouse did it. The spouse did it. Mainly because the spouse will generally have all of those things. Means, motive, and certainly opportunity. But motive, the motive could either be money, an insurance payment, something like that.
It could
the
be a
motive
number.
could be, so what are the motives? What are the motives if a typical murder, what are the motives? Money.
Money.
Right? You either want to steal it or whatever. What else? Historically, murder. Love triangle.
Yeah, I was going to say
right?
anger.
Anger at a romantic thing. Either they're cheating or the killer is cheating with somebody and they want to start a new life with somebody, so they kill this person, right? These are the first things. So, I do believe that plays a role. So now, let's look at inconsistencies. Let's look at now what we know about the killer, Paddock, because he didn't have a previous criminal record. So when we're looking for motive, we're going to look at, was this consistent with the type of behavior that he had? Was he some sort of nut job, or was this consistent? Let's look at this habits.
Before Stephen Paddock unleashed his murderous assault on an innocent concert crowd, he called himself the biggest video poker player in the world, gambling up to $1 million in a single night, overnight, sleeping during the day, prescribed Valium for anxiousness. These are Stephen Paddock's own words as he testified in 2013 in his lawsuit against the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas. The suit stems from this moment. Security cameras catching Paddock slipping and falling in a casino walkway. In the 97-page deposition obtained exclusively by CNN, Paddock testifies about that fall and gives us fresh insight into his mind 4 years before the shooting. Paddock moved from Las Vegas casino to casino, at one point staying maybe upwards of 3 weeks out of a month, he said. A high roller, his hotel stays were comped 95% of the time. Bets range from $100 to $1,350 each time I push the button. Speaking of a peak year, asks an attorney, how many dollars are we talking? I average 14 hours a day, 365 days a year, over 200 million coin through. When Paddock says on a given night he'll bet $1 million, an attorney replies, that's a lot of money. No, it's not. Paddock called video poker a game of discipline, at times appearing condescending and sarcastic as he explains to his attorney why he stays sober while gambling. At the stakes I play, you want to have all your wits about you. Paddock's home in Mesquite, Nevada suggests an upper-middle-class retired life. For easy access to a doctor, Paddock testified he paid a yearly retainer fee to Nevada internist Dr. Stephen Winkler. Paddock says Winkler prescribed him Valium. Why? It's for anxiousness. Rage, aggressiveness, and irritability are among the possible side effects of taking Valium, according to the manufacturer of the drug. The Las Vegas Review-Journal reported that Dr. Winkler prescribed him Valium in June of this year. CNN could not independently confirm that information. Despite all the claims about his high-rolling ways, Paddock testified on the day he fell in the Cosmopolitan, he wore his typical clothing. I always wear black Nike sweatpants that are nylon or polyester. On his feet, black flip-flops that he wore 98% of the time. Life was better before the economic meltdown, he testified, saying Vegas casinos comped less and less, meaning he visited Sin City less. What happened to the economy in 2007, he said? It tanked. Las Vegas went into the gutter with a lot of other things. They quit giving away freebies. It just wasn't worth coming out here as often.
Okay, so what do we know about what do we know about Stephen Paddock? This is him in a sworn deposition. He sued the Cosmo, right? He went to sue the Cosmo for this slip and fall thing. Right. He sued them in 2011, and then I think this is from 2013. At that time, Cosmo is owned by MGM. Now it's owned by Blackstone Group, right?
I think it was owned by Deutsche Bank at that time.
At that time, it was Deutsche Bank. Okay, so he's at Cosmo. What do we know about him so far?
A heavy gambler.
Heavy gambler. What else? What else would you say about his personality? I mean, they're talking about. He says, "I always wear black sweats. I always wear these black flip flops. I gamble 14 hours at a time."
Right.
Right. He's being prescribed Valium. Now, this doesn't surprise me. He's a high stakes gambler. I know a few high rollers. One in particular who I know, he comes into town. He usually comes in with an entourage because his shit is super comped at MGM. And so I get to go and hang out with the guys who are there. And one of our friends in particular, his whole job is to keep him calm while he's playing.
Wow.
Because, like he says, you want to keep your wits about you. The anxiety can. So what I'm sure when if he would get anxious because he was down and he would need to get back up, he'd take a Valium. Now, lots of people take Valium, and that's not. I've never heard of Valium contributing to somebody going on a premeditated shooting rage. It just doesn't happen. But that's all they've got, right? So let's learn some other things that have not necessarily been reported about this guy. Okay, so we get a better view of him. Let's look at this allergies thing. I found this very interesting. This is from Reuters. Talking about Mary Lou Danley, his girlfriend. She was sympathetic in dealing with Paddock's allergy-driven quirks, Eric Paddock told Reuters. Paddock often wore brown cloth gardening gloves to prevent rashes from contact with cleaning chemical residues, the brother wrote. He was also allergic to many pills and was unable to renew his pilot's license. He had flown his plane since he was a teenager because he could not take the pills needed to reduce his blood pressure, so he's got high blood pressure. At casinos where he was a regular, he was such a valued customer that staff obliged his request to wash his room's carpets with plain water. Quote, the reason Mary Lou looks so plain in that picture they keep posting of her is because for him, she would not wear any perfumes or hairsprays or anything with scents in it because it affected him, Eric Paddock wrote, referring to a passport-style photo of Danley that has been widely circulated by news outlets. Okay, so Christian, we've got a little bit of additional information about this guy. Allergy-driven quirks.
Right.
Meaning he wants things very specific.
That's pretty gambler, like hardcore gambler personality trait.
He's got like almost obsessive compulsive disorder.
Obsessive compulsive, yeah. So
people with OCD, they're all about habits, right? They don't leave out of their habits. I find this allergy thing to be important. As we're going to run out of timeline of things that some people don't know that happen that don't make sense with who he is in this case. Other thing about him, let's just go over a little bit about his past that I think is important. Let's throw up this LockHeed thing. Las Vegas shooter worked for, this is from Fox Business, worked for predecessor of Lockheed Martin. The man identified as the shooter responsible for killing and wounding hundreds in Las Vegas, Stephen Paddock, previously worked for a company that later became Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contractor, said the retired Paddock was employed by a predecessor company about 30 years ago. Quote, Stephen Paddock worked for a predecessor company of Lockheed Martin from 1985 until 1988. We're cooperating with authorities to answer questions they may have about Mr. Paddock and his time with the company, Lockheed Martin said in a statement. Lockheed Martin did not disclose which company employed Paddock. The Bethesda, Maryland-based defense contractor was created through the merger of Lockheed Corporation and Martin Marietta in 1995. So he worked for a predecessor, so it could have been Lockheed Corporation, it could have been Martin Marietta. This is an interesting time period, though. So from 1985 to 1988, this is Cold War. This is Cold War. He's working as an accountant for a defense contractor, okay? If you go right now and look at LockHeed jobs and you look at accountants, financial analysts, you're going to need clearance. A great many of those jobs require that you can qualify for top secret clearance. That's important.
Interesting.
That's important. This is an individual, and he only worked for 3 years for Lockheed Martin. But he loved planes. We know he loved guns. Would make sense that he would work for a weapons manufacturer, aerospace. So what do we have here? We have an aerospace weapons manufacturer connection. Also, he stops working there. Then where does he go and work? Then where does he work? How many people work as an accountant for Lockheed for only 3 years?
Right.
And then don't continue on in that industry? Especially someone who loves to fly. He had a pilot's license until recently, until he couldn't fly because of blood pressure medication. And he owned 2 planes. And he loved guns.
Wow.
And he just, there's nothing else. Where is the employment history for this guy? There's no employment history. He's a retiree. Retired from where? Retired from where? This is an inconsistency. But we do know that the last job that we have for him puts him working for a defense contractor and puts him, it very likely, as someone who has a top secret or some high-level security clearance. Probably at that time top secret because he was working for Lockheed during the Cold War. This is like SR-71 time right there, man, that he's working for them. All right? So, so this is what we know a little bit about him. Now, let's go into, because this is where it starts getting weird, and these are the things that no one's talking about that I find to be the most important inconsistencies in this whole thing. So, here's the guy, okay? We know a little bit about this guy. We know he lives outside of Nevada, retirement community, sleepy retirement community. When he comes to Vegas, he comes and he plays at places where he can get comped rooms. He's very big on the comped rooms. He likes the comped rooms, okay? He's a creature of habit, not straying from his habits. He always wears the same sweatpants. He always wears the same flip-flops.
Compulsive gambler.
Compulsive gambler. Habits. Habits. When an individual who has certain habits breaks those habits, you take notice. That's what was happening just in the weeks preceding this. So let's talk about this story. This was where I started saying, okay, something's fucked up. This is the festival story. This is from the LA Times. Mandalay Bay gunman spent 2 weeks in Las Vegas before killings and researched outdoor concerts in other large cities, according to the LA Times. This is from the Times. In the first week of August, Paddock reserved rooms at an upscale hotel overlooking Chicago's Grant Park during Lollapalooza, one of the nation's largest outdoor music festivals, a law enforcement source said. The event was headlined by major acts including Chance the Rapper, The Killers, and Muse, and attendees included Sasha and Malia Obama, the daughters of President Obama. It would have been a target similar to the one in Las Vegas, huge crowds packed into an outdoor space beneath tall buildings, but with far more people. Paddock was ultimately a no-show for this reservation in Chicago. Quote, "We can confirm that there was no guest under that name who stayed at our hotel in August during the Lollapalooza Music Festival," said Blackstone hotel spokeswoman Emmy Carragher. After paying for his girlfriend's trip to visit family in the Philippines, Paddock appears to have been in downtown Las Vegas from September 14th to 28th, according to records reviewed by the representatives of the El Cortez Hotel and Casino, who spoke to the Times on condition of anonymity. The representative said Paddock did not spend the night there or make a reservation, but he was seen in the El Cortez on September 16th, and he obtained a player's card and played slots and blackjack on September 17th, buying in on the latter with $40. Representatives said Paddock won about $300. He only played one time, one of the representatives said, enough to get a meal. The next week, Paddock returned to El Cortez on September 21st and 24th. At some point, he ate 2 meals with his winnings. He cashed out his ticket on September 24th, his sole use of the casino's ATM machines. The timeline overlaps with the 3-day outdoor Life is Beautiful concert, which ran from September 22nd to 24th and which featured similarly high-profile acts as Lollapalooza. Paddock booked an Airbnb in a condo building overlooking the Life is Beautiful music festival, leading investigators to gather video footage from the building to learn more. Quote, was he doing pre-surveillance? We don't know yet, Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo said on Wednesday. El Cortez representatives disputed reports that Paddock was kicked out of the property or that the hotel was sold out around the time of Life is Beautiful. Casino representatives said he was not on the radar of management because he did not win or lose a substantial sum. After Paddock was identified, a compliance officer for El Cortez entered his name into their system and determined he had a brief, limited interaction there, representatives said. The hotel leaders then contacted police to share their findings. Okay, Christian, so here's what we have. Paddock, on the 16th of September. So let's first do this. It says he sent his girlfriend to the Philippines, and we'll cover that. So Mary Lou Danley, his girlfriend, arrives she flies from LA to Tokyo to Philippines, and we'll cover those dates. But the important date is that the either leaving date or the arrival date is September 14th, right, approximately. So, September 16th, this dude's in El Cortez. He didn't have a player's card. He didn't have a player's card for El Cortez. He went to El Cortez on the 16th, he got a player's card, and he played slots and blackjack on September 17th, buying in on the ladder with $40. He played blackjack.
And this is a guy that
plays video poker
and up to $1 million a night or something like that, right?
Correct.
High stakes.
So, and he's going to a place where he doesn't get anything comped. He's going downtown to the El Cortez when he's top tier at Caesars and top tier at MGM. Why? This is huge.
Yeah.
Why is this guy, like, for people who don't know, El Cortez is kind of a dumpy little old hotel in an area that was previously completely forgotten and just had homeless people like wandering the streets. It's a dump. It's a dump. The other thing about it is it's dirty. It's gross in there. And this is someone who's like big about the hygiene. Okay, but the story is he's down there. So we have this story about the Ogden, but let's first, so this is strange. So let's cover this little section because I believe something's happening, and I believe by the end of this, you'll agree. I think that everybody can figure out what the hell is happening here. So he booked some hotels in Chicago. Let's examine this Chicago story. So let's go Chicago. This is when it starts. This is when the story begins. Okay. This is from TMZ. Stephen Paddock had set his sights on Lollapalooza in Chicago and even booked 2 rooms in a hotel that overlooked a massive outdoor venue, TMZ has learned. Then they have a picture actually off the computer. Check out this pic of a computer screen at the Blackstone Hotel in Chicago, located across the street from the venue Grant Park, where 400,000 people, including Malia Obama, squeezed in over 4 days to watch big musical acts. Paddock booked 1 room for August 1st, 2017. 2 days before the August 3rd kickoff. Paddock then booked a second room for an August 3rd arrival. Both rooms had an August 6th checkout date. That's when Lollapalooza ended. The hotel directly overlooked the main stage as well as several adjoining stages. It also overlooks the main entrance and exit where thousands of people file through, and the hotel had a bird's eye view of the crowd. We're told Paddock specifically requested both rooms be a view room, which only face Grant Park, where the concert was being held. And here's the scariest part. It's difficult, if not impossible, to flee because of Lake Michigan. Sources tell Paddock had never booked a room at the hotel before, nor had his girlfriend. So, Christian, don't get off this because the timeline's very important here. So he calls up, and you see that on the 23rd of July, okay, he calls up and he books a room for August 1st through August 6th. Okay? He calls up on the 23rd.
Yeah.
4 days later, on the 27th, he calls up and he books a room for August 3rd through 6th, meaning later check-in, but both rooms overlap. Now, let's forget about a shooter, okay?
Right.
Forget about a shooter. Leave this up so people can see it. We'll talk this through. Forget about a shooter. You work at a hotel, right? I actually have been a front desk clerk before. Front desk clerk, you know the dates of Lollapalooza when they're coming.
Right.
Guy calls up. He says, okay, I want a room from the 1st through the 6th, and I want it to overlook Grant Park. What do you think he's there for?
I would, well,
Lollapalooza, right?
Lollapalooza, yeah.
He wants specifically during the time of Lollapalooza, he wants to overlook it. He's going to get there a few days early, check out the city, right? Yeah. Okay. Then he calls 4 days later, and he says, hey, I've already got a room, but I want to get a second room. But I only want it for the 3rd through the 6th. Now, the 3rd is the opening day of Lollapalooza. He wants both rooms. Why is he getting the second room? It's not a shooter.
Right.
Why is he getting the second room? What would be your first inclination?
Girlfriend or friends?
Friends, right? It's a party.
Yeah.
He's traveling with a party of people. They're all going to Lollapalooza. Now, how I read this, now, he didn't have friends. He didn't have friends.
Right.
We know this. He did not have friends. And there's no fucking gambling there. This dude's a compulsive gambler. There's no gambling there. So, this is interesting. This is a break in a pattern. Who are these friends? And where did they come from? Now, other thing about it. He's a 64-year-old man. Okay? Compulsive gambler. Does all of this. What do you think, how likely do you think it is he wanted to go and check out Chance the Rapper?
Seriously. Slim to none.
Slim
Zero.
to none. But yet he specifically wants, we know he's there for Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
He's booking it for Lollapalooza, clearly. He doesn't want to. What would make a 64-year-old man book rooms during Lollapalooza? What would make him do that?
If he was, well, I would say if he was planning something, if he was...
Take out
the shooting.
Take out the shooting. A shooting never happened here. This is before you know a shooting. You see this happening. What would make a 64-year-old man decide to book hotel rooms for a music festival that a whole bunch of young people are going to? What would motivate him to do that?
I don't know.
Really? Well, I think there's a lot of listeners out there that know. And I think that I know as well. Okay? And you're going to see why this adds up with his behavior. Because he had a new young girlfriend.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He had a new young girlfriend who said, oh, I really love music festivals. I'd love to go to Lollapalooza in Chicago.
Gotcha.
And he says, I booked guess what? I booked us a hotel room. We're going to go to Lollapalooza. Oh my God, we're going to Lollapalooza. We're going to Lollapalooza. Can my friends come? Oh, are you going to go? I don't want you to have to go with me.
Gotcha.
Can my friends come?
That makes sense.
Could you, do you think you could book a room for my friends? Okay, yeah, I can do that. Well, yeah, that way they can take care of me. And you can be looking down on me and like, you can see me and I can wave to you from the hotel room. You can check on me. But he never shows up to Lollapalooza. Right? But then a month later, let's go with this. Here's another weird thing. Let's go with this long term. This is another thing nobody's talking about, nobody's reporting upon. This is from the Las Vegas Sun. Las Vegas gunmen had sought long-term lease at Ogden. The Route 91 Harvest Festival gunmen began the process of obtaining a long-term rental unit at a downtown high-rise condo building weeks before the Life is Beautiful Festival, according to a letter sent to the Ogden residents by its homeowners association. In the letter sent Thursday, it's revealed that an outside real estate agent showed Stephen Paddock a privately owned unit inside the 21-story residential building on September 8th, and he later completed a rental application. The real estate agent provided Paddock with a 1-year lease agreement, but the gunman never responded to receiving it. They do not know why. It previously has been reported that Paddock rented and stayed in multiple units over several days before and during Life is Beautiful, which ran September 22nd through 24th, and drew an attendance of 137,000 people over 3 days. Sheriff Joe Lombardo said those units were acquired through Airbnb, a popular web platform that allows people to rent out their rooms or entire residences. So, Christian, again, here we go. Here's this guy, September 8th. So this is the week before his girlfriend leaves. This is the week before he's in El Cortez, the week before he's spotted otherwise downtown. He has a real estate agent show him a condo for lease on a long-term lease in the Ogden. Now, this is a 64-year-old man who lives, owns a house in Mesquite, and when he comes to Vegas, has his rooms comped. Before, he had said he would stay 5 nights out of a week in a comped hotel room. What would make a 64-year-old man go and try to lease a condo at the Ogden, which is fucking party central, where there's kids passing by you all day, every day, puking in the elevators. It's below it is actual literal nightclubs. What would make a 64-year-old man want to take out a year-long lease on an apartment at the Ogden? Go.
New girlfriend.
Yes. That one's clear.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Yeah. Yep.
That one is so obvious. Now, then let's go to the next. Let's look at this Ogden story. So, this is about his time at the Ogden, all right? Paddock rented a room overlooking the Life is Beautiful festival in downtown Las Vegas a week earlier, Lombardo said. Lombardo said Paddock used room-sharing site Airbnb to rent a room at the Ogden during the festival, which ran from September 22nd to 24th. He said investigators had not yet determined why Paddock rented the room or whether he was engaged in pre-surveillance of the music and art event. Quote, "We don't know yet," he said of Paddock's presence in the condominium complex. Now, here's what's important, because this is a pattern. So, what do you remember about his booking pattern in Chicago? What do we know? He booked rooms. Oh, no, go back to it. Go back to it. Because people will want to see this. In Chicago, we know that he booked multiple rooms and that the dates were not all the same across the rooms. Here's where it gets, oh, no, now this is covered up. We're going to have to wait for this to, wait for it to go away. Don't go back to us. Okay. Don't go back to us. Don't go back to us. So let's see when this goes away. So what we would expect, if my theory is right, that he had a new girlfriend who said she liked music festivals and wanted to go with her friends, but for some reason they couldn't go to Chicago. This is Las Vegas Review-Journal. According to the law enforcement source, Paddock tried to get a room at El Cortez, but it was sold out. So he rented 3 rooms at the Ogden, 150 Las Vegas Boulevard North. One room was booked between September 17th and 22nd. A second room was booked from September 21st to 23rd. And the third, September 24th to 28th. So basically what you have is you've got these 3 rooms, right? That 2 of them overlap, September 17th through 22nd. Now here's the thing. This thing doesn't even start till the 22nd. So there's 5 days that he's renting a room where Life is Beautiful will not even be there. Then he books a second room, 21st through 23rd. Okay? That is during the festival. Then he books a third room that goes September 24th through 28th. Again, 4 days, no festival. Now, if you're going to shoot up a festival, the 21st through 23rd makes sense.
Right.
The other 2 make no sense. But if you're putting your girlfriend up, your new girlfriend up in a place, that makes sense. Especially if she doesn't necessarily live in town. She's coming in from out of town. This is how you're connecting with her. It also makes sense of why he would go down to the El Cortez to gamble. Killing time. He's killing time. He's going to the closest. The El Cortez, for people who don't know, is next door to the Ogden. You walk out of the Ogden, you walk across the street, you're inside the El Cortez.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? New girlfriend.
Yeah.
Now, also reports when he's in Mandalay Bay, these reports of him being with a mystery woman. You can go back to us now. These reports of him being with a mystery woman. Right? So, you talk about 9 times out of 10 when someone gets murdered, the spouse did it, and we said cheating is a possible motivation. Now, let's talk about the prospective spouse, because there are some interesting things about her as well that are some inconsistencies. This is Mary Lou Danley. Let's listen to the official story, which is the statement. Now, mind you, one thing that we said is no one has seen Mary Lou Danley.
Right.
You've seen pictures from her Facebook page.
And on Google and all that stuff.
But you've never seen a video of her.
No.
She's never given an interview. You've never talked to anybody who saw her on the any of the airplanes she was traveling on. Nothing. Nothing. As a matter of fact, the gate agents didn't even see her, because supposedly when she got to LAX, the FBI grabbed her and took her out another exit.
Right.
To try to like stay away from the crowds or whatever. Okay. Let's go with the statement. This is all we have. A statement read by her lawyer. Go ahead, this is a statement.
I have a statement to read from my client, Mary Lou Danley. I am devastated by the deaths and injuries that have occurred, and my prayers go out to the victims and their families and all those who have been hurt by these awful events. I have faith in God, and I will continue to pray for everyone who has been harmed or hurt. I am a mother and a grandmother, and my heart breaks for all who have lost loved ones. I knew Stephen Paddock as a kind, caring, quiet man. I loved him and hoped for a quiet future together with him. He never said anything to me or took any action that I was aware of that I understood in any way to be a warning that something horrible like this was going to happen. A little more than 2 weeks ago, Stephen told me he'd found a cheap ticket for me to the Philippines and that he wanted me to take a trip home to see my family. Like all Filipinos abroad, I was excited to go home and see family and friends. While there, he wired me money, which he said was for me to buy a house for me and my family. I was grateful, but honestly, I was worried that first, the unexpected trip home, and then the money was a way of breaking up with me. It never occurred to me in any way whatsoever that he was planning violence against anyone. I have not made a statement until now because I have been cooperating with the authorities, and I voluntarily flew back to America because I know that the FBI and Las Vegas Police Department wanted to talk to me, and I want to talk to them. I will cooperate fully with their investigation. Anything I can do to help ease suffering and help in any way, I will do. Please respect my privacy and my family's privacy. Thank you.
Okay, but the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, no matter how bad they want to talk to her, have not talked to her. No one has talked to her except for the FBI who took her off the plane. Now, if we are to take Mary Lou Danley at her word, she was under the impression that she was getting broken up with.
Right.
Now, that doesn't come out of the blue. That doesn't come out of the blue that someone thinks they're getting broken up with. Also, all we know about this ticket is that Mary Lou Danley, in a statement, if that's Mary Lou Danley who wrote the statement, we don't even know that that's what she said. Claims he bought the ticket. He found a ticket for her, bought it for her, and said you should go. Found a cheap ticket and said you should go. This is a guy who's a multi-millionaire who he cares about finding a cheap ticket to the Philippines?
Right, exactly.
Found a cheap ticket and you should go. Then he wires her $100,000 when she's in the Philippines. Wires her $100,000. So you live with somebody, you want to give them $100,000, you put them on a plane, and then you wait to wire it to them in the Philippines. What the fuck? Does this woman not have a fucking bank account? Wires her $100,000. Now, there's some weird things about Mary Lou Danley, so let's look at this. Let's look at her trip timeline here. So she arrived in Manila on September 15th. Remember, the 14th is when this dude is first spotted downtown. More than 2 weeks before the mass shooting in Las Vegas, then flew to Hong Kong on September 22nd and returned to Manila on September 25th. She was there until she flew to LAX on Tuesday night, according to Philippine immigration officials who spoke on condition of anonymity. Those 2 dates. So she flies to Manila, and then she flies to Hong Kong on the 22nd through the 25th. Well, isn't that convenient that that's exactly the same dates as a Life is Beautiful festival? Right. Isn't that weird? I mean, I'm sure it's just coincidence. I'm sure it's just coincidence that at the time that Life is Beautiful is going on, that she happens to be in Hong Kong, not Manila. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's look at this graphic so that you can see basically how this looks. So she gets to Tokyo, Japan. Then she flies from Tokyo to Manila. She gets to Manila on the 15th. Then she goes from Manila to Hong Kong on the 22nd, flies back on the 25th, and then October 3rd, she's back in the U.S. Okay, fine. So now let's talk about what's interesting about this. On her return, let's look at this return. This is her return document. Mary Lou Danley. This is the picture ID of Mary Lou Danley, who arrived in the United States Tuesday, October 3rd. A Philippine Bureau of Immigration officials told ABS-CBN that Danley had flown from Manila on September 22nd to Hong Kong for a 4-day trip and returned to Manila from Hong Kong on September 25th via Cebu Pacific flight. There's a number using an Australian passport. On Tuesday, ABC News reported Danley was en route to the U.S. within 24 hours, but did not specify from which country she was coming. Her public profile describes her as gambling and casino professional, and has resided in Reno, Nevada during the last 20 years, which could also make her either a U.S. immigrant or a U.S. citizen. And you see that this is an Australian passport, a photo of an Australian passport that she's using to travel. Wow. So come back to us, Christian. This should raise a lot of questions.
Yeah.
This woman's traveling on an Australian passport. What do we know about this? So she's born in Philippines, but she has an Australian passport, and she lives and has been living in the U.S. For 20 some odd years. This is normal? This is normal? I looked at this and I said, traveling on an Australian passport?
That's fucking weird.
Traveling on an Australian passport? So is she an Australian citizen? And if so, she's just here on a green card? But she was married to an American.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns out she was married to an Australian first. That's how she got her Australian citizenship. Then she came to the States. She married the guy Danley, Gary Danley. She was married to him for 15 years. So I said, wow, she's married to him for 15 years. And she didn't get a U.S. citizenship, but then I was like, oh, but she couldn't have had both. So maybe she is an Australian citizen.
Yeah, that's weird.
Let's go to dual citizen. Got it? Dual citizen?
Yeah, I see it.
This is from the Australian Immigration Bureau. Dual citizenship. It is possible to hold citizenship for 2 or more countries if the law of those countries allow. This is known as dual or multiple citizenship. People can become dual citizens automatically or after being granted citizenship of another country. For example, an Australian citizen may automatically gain citizenship of another country through marriage, while a permanent resident of Australia may become a dual citizen by becoming an Australian citizen. Prior to 4th of April 2002, Australian citizens who became citizens of another country lost their Australian citizenship automatically. So, Christian, what do you how likely do you think it is that it's after 2002, this law passes, she can become a dual citizen, she's been married to an American for the requisite amount of time, which is how long? Let's go with naturalize here, the very next one. Naturalization for spouses. In general, you may qualify for naturalization if you have been a permanent resident green card holder for at least 3 years, have been living in marital union with the same U.S. citizen spouse during such a time, meet all other eligibility requirements under this section. So we've got, Christian, come on back to us, we've got the most likely scenario. We've got someone who's a dual citizen with 2 passports. 2 passports. Traveling on an Australian passport. 2 passports. Remember that.
Key.
Is that normal?
No.
Is it normal for someone born in Philippines to have dual citizenship in Australia and the United States? Is that normal?
Not whatsoever.
No. So she's already kind of an abnormal person. And just so happens to be out of the country when her boyfriend goes on a crazy shooting spree that no one can explain the motive. And during that time, just so happens that he wires her $100,000. That's not suspicious. That's not fucking suspicious at all. So what else do we know about her? This is one thing that nobody had really looked into. So her profile says that she is a gambling and casino professional, right? Let's go with this jobs thing. So this is about how they met. Eventually around this is from CNN, just a piece of an article. Eventually around 2012, Paddock began spending more time in Reno and sticking to his pattern, began buying property there. He also found a girlfriend, although it's not clear how they met. Mary Lou Danley's job may have been the connection. An Australian citizen and former airline hostess and Avon sales representative, she worked for a time as a hostess to high-limit gamblers at Club Paradise at the Atlantis Casino Resort Spa. Now, Christian, it's been reported that that is how they met, that he was a high roller, she was a hostess to high-limit gamblers at Club Paradise. Right. That's where he was. Come back to us, dude. What I found interesting when I saw that is I was like, former airline hostess?
Yeah.
What do we know about this? The only place that this, oh, there you go. Screw that in. The only place that this came up, that I found this, and I think that this is the original source for this, go to this Reno thing. Reno?
Job 2?
No, Reno. It's way above that.
Oh, there we go.
Got it. So this is from the San Jose Mercury News. And this is a little bit about their situation in Reno. According to court records, Danley had been living in Nevada and appears to have been living with Paddock as early as August 2013, while she was still married to another man named Gary Danley. Gary and Mary Lou Danley were married in Las Vegas in 1990. According to court records, they jointly filed for divorce on February 25th, 2015, and the divorce was finalized the next day. During her divorce, Mary Lou Danley listed a downtown Reno apartment as her address. Property records show the apartment was owned by shooting suspect Stephen Paddock. So hold on. Here we have Stephen Paddock putting his girlfriend up in an apartment. Pattern. All right. At one point, this is interesting. At one point, Danley worked for an airline based out of the Bay Area, said a longtime neighbor in Reno where Danley and Paddock lived together in a retirement community. She later worked for Avon, the cosmetic sales company, and tried to sell their products to other residents, Elizabeth Tye said. Danley traveled all the time, and when she was at the home she shared with Paddock in a retirement community in Reno, it was never for very long. Tye said Danley would show up every 3 or 4 months and stay for no more than 10 days. So leave this on, Christian. This is important. 2012, Paddock shows up in Reno. From August 2013, this woman is living with Stephen Paddock. Okay? They meet when she's a casino host. The weirdest thing about this is, while they're living together, a neighbor in Reno says she starts working for an airline based out of the Bay Area. Now, she's got a LinkedIn profile, doesn't list her working for an airline. She's got a Facebook, doesn't list her as working for an airline. She's got no Facebook pictures of her with her airline friends. She's got none of that. This again is something very, very strange. So, also the fact that she's leaving, all right? She's not working for Avon when she's gone for 3 to 4 months and then only back for 10 days at a time. Now, if she's leaving for 3 to 4 months, she's not in Reno, she's not working at the Atlantis. Now, has she stopped working altogether? She's not working for fucking Avon, being gone for 3 to 4 months.
Nope.
So, the only other job that the neighbor knows, she's working for an airline that she has never mentioned in anything, and an airline that supposedly is based out of the Bay Area. Okay? So, as I said last week, the key for me in this whole thing was Janet Air. Janet Air is an airline. Now, Janet Air is based out of Las Vegas. Okay, that's fine. Or is it, right? Or is it? So let's go, where are we? Employment, let's go Reno. Is this Reno?
We're on Reno right now.
So let's go properties. To get a timeline, because this is interesting. So, this is from Time Money. This is about Paddock's properties and the timeline of him buying them. So he lived with his girlfriend in an upscale 55-plus retirement community in Mesquite, about 80 miles from Las Vegas. He bought the 2018 square foot home in 2015 for $369,000 according to the Review Journal. Actually, what it says in the Review Journal is he bought this home in January of 2015 in Las Vegas. Mary Lou Danley filed for and received a divorce in February of 2015. He also paid $238,000 in 2013 for a home in the Sierra Canyon by Del Webb community in Reno, where properties now list for $300,000 to $600,000. That was where he lived with Danley. In addition, the Reno Gazette-Journal reported that Paddock owned a condo at the Montage in downtown Reno before selling it in December 2016. That condo is the apartment that Mary Lou Danley was listing. Okay, so what we have here is a decision being made to move sticks in 2015 to move down to Las Vegas from Reno. He owns 2 properties in Reno. A decision is made to move down. He buys a house in January. In February, Mary Lou Danley files, you can come back to us. In February, Mary Lou Danley files for divorce. What does this tell me? What this tells me is this woman, Mary Lou Danley, is looking for a bigger commitment.
Yeah.
She says, we need to be living together. Right? I don't want to be spending this time of us apart. Let's spend time together. And in spending time together, he decides to move to Las Vegas. Right outside Las Vegas. Now, that must mean that where Mary Lou Danley had been those 3 or 4 months was down in Las Vegas.
Right.
Doing what? Working what job? Was she working at a casino? Absolutely not. How do we know that? Nobody's come forward and said they fucking worked with her. What's she doing in Vegas? What's Mary Lou Danley doing in Vegas? And what's up with this airline that she's working for that's based out of the Bay Area? So let's look at, why don't you throw up Janet Opp? This is when we start getting into it. I mentioned Janet Air before. Janet Air is 1 block away from where the shooting happened. This is from Wikipedia. This is their operation section. Due to the airline's secretive nature, little is known about its organization. It is operated for the U.S. Air Force by infrastructure and defense contractor ACOM through ACOM's acquisition in 2014 of URS Corporation, which acquired EG&G Technical Services in 2012 as derived from URS's history of providing this service to the Air Force and job openings published by URS. For example, in 2010, URS announced it would be hiring Boeing 737 flight attendants to be based in Las Vegas, requiring applicants to undergo a single-scope background investigation in order to be able to obtain a top-secret security clearance. So let's first say, what is a single-scope background investigation? So go single-scope. So it's a type of security clearance required for top-secret access. So they look at they check you through your national agencies. They check your birth, they do a subject interview, they check who you live with, all of these things. Citizenship must be a U.S. citizen. Independent verification of citizenship received directly from the appropriate registration authority. Which would make sense why the story needs to stay that she's an Australian citizen if she's been working for Janet Air, which also, as a dual citizen and someone with a plausible deniability of citizenship, makes her a good potential candidate. In addition, probably doesn't hurt that you're living with somebody who had previously had security clearance because he'd been cleared by Lockheed Martin. We'll talk about that a little more. Let's look at what one of these this job opening for flight attendants. There was one hidden way back that someone had posted on their blog from 2010, a flight attendant blog. Here it is. EGG, AK Janet, Las Vegas. Company name, URS Corporation. Position, B737 flight attendant. Full-time, regular hire, high school graduate, must present a neat professional appearance, must pass company-operated jet aircraft emergency training and initial flight attendant training and maintain currency as flight attendant. Must be able to qualify for and maintain a top-secret security clearance. Possess a valid current state driver's license. Let's go next. Let's say you want to apply. Address, headquarters, 600 Montgomery Street, 26th floor, San Francisco, California. So, Christian, what we have here is we have an airline based in Las Vegas. No, an airline headquartered in the Bay Area, just as was said by the neighbor, that flies out of Las Vegas, that flies out of the top secret location 1 block away from the shooting, with a woman who we don't know where the fuck she was working, but clearly was down in Las Vegas, who is a dual citizen, who there's questionable shit around this guy, who's with a guy who used to work for LockHeed, and we don't really know for how long, and we don't know what security clearance he had, and it's even conceivable that he still had some friends, because when you get a new girlfriend, right, he meets this woman, she's working at Atlantis Casino in Reno. He's trying to show off for her. She starts living with him. I don't want you working in that casino anymore. I'll call a few friends. I bet I know a job you could get. Calls up his LockHeed guys. Oh yeah, you know, they've got some flight attendants, you know, that we fly out to the testing range, Janet Air. And then, oh, she's working for them. Okay, so here we go. Moving forward. So let's look, we'll look at URS and ACOM. So these are the companies. As you see, their headquarters, Transamerica Pyramid, San Francisco, California. They were acquired by ACOM. Let's go to ACOM. ACOM is who runs Janet Air. All right. Now, let's talk about, so now, Christian, we've developed this out. This is the theory. You can come back to us. So this is the background. This is now, again, I'm only telling a story. I'm only telling a story with pieces that fit. Right. Now, I said from the beginning that Janet Air was a key. Before I knew anything about Mary Lou Danley. Before I knew anything about Stephen Paddock. Before I knew anything, Janet Air is a key.
Just off of the principle that you talked about earlier, if
a crime occurs and there's somebody, so if there's, like I said, if there's a rapist, if a rape occurs in a neighborhood and a rapist lives down the block, you knock on his door.
Exactly. Yeah,
if a whole bunch of people get killed by military weapons, now these are military, automatic, can't be got by civilians. A whole bunch of people get killed with military weapons under mysterious circumstances, and on that block there is a top secret military weapons testing facility, you at least knock on the door. But the only problem is you can't knock on the door. You can't knock on the door, Janet Air. And let's show people so that they understand just exactly, because see, I knew this because I used that road.
Right.
Not only have I been right next to Janet Air because I've been to Ernie Moody's hangar and I've seen these planes up close, I use that road. Like, it's hard to understand just how close we're talking about. I'm going to try to show it.
Right.
Because once you know how close it is, you're like, oh shit. Okay? So let's go map. This is the map. What you see is Mandalay Bay on the left-hand side. You see Janet Air on the right-hand side, and sort of triangle in between. So you've got this block in the middle, then it's Janet Air, and at the top, middle area, you see where the festival was taking place. Now, to show you just exactly why Janet Air makes sense to me in this case, throw up this trajectory. What I did was I took a line. I drew a line from Stephen Paddock's room to the center, right dead in front of the stage. Then I took that same line, same length, same angle, and I just flipped it horizontally, attached it to itself.
Wow.
And where does it land you? Literally at the doorstep of Janet Air. It lands you on their parking lot. That's just coincidence?
That's crazy.
Because, here's one thing. That location and room was chosen. Could have chose Tropicana, could have chose Luxor. As a matter of fact, Luxor is actually closer. Could have chose Tropicana, could have chose Luxor. Didn't. Chose Mandalay Bay. Why? Why? So that people can get an idea. Go to this from stage. I went to Google Maps. This is looking, you're basically standing just right to the right of the stage. You're standing in the road. The stage almost abuts the road. You're looking straight forward. If you look down that road, to the right of those fuel tanks is the Janet Air parking lot. Now let's look at it looking from Janet Air, so from the lot. You can see, this is you standing basically on the Janet Air parking lot corner. Looking, you can, that little black line that you see going there, that's the fence of the place. You can shout. You can shout to the venue.
Crazy.
From the parking lot of Janet Air. Now, let's see what a drone view looks like. This is a drone. Now, before I had said that I believe that the drones moved around. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that these drones were, for the most part, stationary over the Janet Air parking lot. Look at what this view looks like. This is a drone hovering above the Janet Air parking lot. Look at that shot. Look at that shot.
Wow.
This is directly over the Janet Air parking lot. So people are like, that drone doesn't exist. That drone doesn't exist, and even this doesn't even make sense. We're going to show a timeline. Show this check here. Now you see the Hebrew in the background, and you see that this big check says Duke, $100,000. Big old check. Now what is this check for? Let's go to award. This is from Geek Time, and this is the only article about this, and it's very, very important. Where is it? Let me get it here. Oh, do I not have it? This is a U.S. Defense Department comes to Tel Aviv looking for military innovation. Here we go. Very important. This is from June 7th, 2016, last year. After months of entries and a long selection process, Israeli defense and security startups gathered on Monday for the now annual Combating Terrorism Technology Conference held next to the Tel Aviv University campus. Sponsored by the United States Defense Department's Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office, Israel's Ministry of Defense Directorate of Defense Research and Development, and the MIT Enterprise Forum of Israel, the competition sought out the most innovative technologies for deployment with the U.S. security and military forces. As with last year's event, a $100,000 prize was hanging in the balance for the security-related startup with the winning ideas. Additionally, this year, a new mobile apps category was added with another $100,000 for the taking. Over 120 different startups sent entries, which were reviewed by panels of experts in different fields that could sort through the fray of different technologies, ranging from hardware, personnel tracking, computer vision and image mapping, cybersecurity, and many others. In the end, Gideon Miller of the MIT Enterprise Forum, who helped make this day happen, told Geek Time that 10 companies made it into the general competition while another 9 came to the mobile section. That part's important. These entries were reviewed by panels of experts in different fields that could sort through the technologies, meaning the complete breakdown of these technologies were given to the Department of Defense. They went through with a fine-tooth comb to see which ones were good, and here's from the article again. At the end of the day, Duke Robotics system, which developed a stabilization system that allows for drones of all sorts to carry different forms of peripheral add-ons, including firearms, won first place and a nice chunk of change in their pockets. The checks and certificates were presented to the participants by U.S. Ambassador Daniel Shapiro. That guy holding the other side of that check is the U.S. Ambassador to Israel. Daniel Shapiro, who spoke about the importance of mutual work on developing important technologies for defense, including the detection of tunnels from the Gaza Strip, interception of rockets like with the Iron Dome system, and other advances in technology that benefit both Israeli and American forces. The ambassador told the crowd that he was impressed by the range of ideas that are making the world a safer place. In attendance of the event were this is Combating Terrorism Office, Chief of Staff Adam Tarsi, and the MIT Chief Scientist Dov Oster, who spoke to the audience about their impressions of this year's crop of companies. This is important. The guy from the Department of Defense, Tarsi, this is what he says. Tarsi, who's been coming to Israel for over a decade, seeking out great technologies to integrate into the U.S. defense base, told Geek Time that, quote, the overall level of the contestants rose dramatically this year. There were a couple of really good ones last year and some that needed a lot of work. This year there was a much more polish, and the general level of applicability and innovation was 2 steps of where it was last year. So we went from having, on a scale of 1 to 10, a lot of 3s, 4s, and 5s, to having 7s and 8s, and things that we really had to struggle with to get first and second place. With the stiff competition of great startups came some difficult decisions, Tarsi says, that in choosing their winner, they wanted to see real innovation. Quote, we're looking for things that are really novel, but it's hard to find bolts of lightning. Not everything is coming out of nowhere and game-changing technology, he said to Geek Time. Unlike other sorts of tech investors that can play a long game on an interesting idea, Tarsi is representing the American security establishment and is pressed to find solutions that will directly address the needs of the people in the field. This is important. Quote, we looked at how can I see an operator using this technology in the near future, he explains, pointing to Duke as an example of the types of solutions that appeal to him. It was ready to go in an application that we thought that our tactical users, our guys in the field, would be able to utilize in the near term, explains Tarsi. So, Christian, what we have is last year, the technology that enables a drone, and we'll show what this technology is. Go ahead and put up gimbal. This is the technology. It's basically a system that attaches to a drone, that allows small arms to be fired. And because the problem would be that the drones would fire, you can come back to us, the drones would fire these small arms and it would throw the drone all out of whack, yeah. Right? So this gimbal allows for that, and it stabilizes and then the drone fixes itself. Now, there's some issues with this, okay? And we see, interestingly, while all of this is happening, weirdly enough, in the same whole space, this goes from basically unknown to these guys putting it out in public. And this should give people a lot of pause. Do this promo vid. Do we have it?
Yeah.
Can now be deployed to places human soldiers can't reach or simply shouldn't have to go. TIKAD is able to adjust for the right place and time. The TIKAD robot is designed to identify, target, and engage in real-life scenarios. TIKAD takes the full recoil of the weapon discharge, compensates for its force, and quickly readjusts to stay on target and in the fight. The Defense Department chose Duke as winner of the 2016 Terror Combat Competition. The company is in the process of implementing orders from the Israeli forces. Every year in the U.S., more than $150 billion is spent in R&D and acquisition of better solutions to secure our troops. The total global aerial drone market by itself is expected to reach $10 billion in 2017. Over the next several years, the military, robotic, and drone sector will continue to lead all other sectors in drone spending. Invest in Duke Robotics. TIKAD, the robot that will transform the way conflicts are being solved.
Okay, you can come back now, Steve.
Duke. Nope.
Okay, so here's the deal. These guys start going after fundraising. Now, the other thing about that I found interesting about this, as I was looking at this, and a piece that stood out to me and why I said, it's not Duke. It's not these guys.
No.
It's not this thing. The reason why, as I looked further, their gimbal that they created can only do semi-automatic.
I see.
It can't do, it can't stabilize enough for automatic. It can only do semi-automatic.
But the technology is there.
Well, the Defense Department has had all of their technical specs of what theirs does since June of 2016. They found it to be so valuable, they cut these guys a $100,000 check. Right? They talked about, this is the type of technology that we could use right now. Right fucking now, it's ready to go. Representative of the Department of Defense says, it's ready to go. We're paying these guys. So, this, as a tech guy, I know what this is. Now, but now these guys are going for funding. So check out, so let's just throw up this, this TechCrunch thing, because I think that is key. So, what do we got? A defense company put a machine gun on a drone. I'll just do an important part from this. So, Duke is saying that they're currently in testing with the Israeli army and that they are also doing a sort of online crowd sale for investment, which is why they produce such a titillating video. Given the current state of drone technology, a product like this would be dangerous for use in real situations, but with a bit of engineering and improvement, you could have something that could launch from a distant location, move in from the kill, and then fly back. It could also, like so many drones on the market, explode when it hits a tree. So take TIKAD with a grain of salt. This is an investment strategy, not a final product, and I suspect if it were that easy to stick a gun onto a drone, we'd have something smaller than the Predator flying around. So TechCrunch is like, their product is almost ready. It's almost ready. So what do I see? What I see is, this was taken by the Department of Defense. This was taken out. The technology was taken out to the testing range. They gave it to their engineers. They said, can you take this and improve it so it can do automatic weapons? They've been doing that for the last year. Now, it would make sense that they were doing it at Area 51 and the other proving grounds, which is where Janet Air flies to every day. That would make sense, because that's where they would test this, because that's where they test secret aircraft. That is the location. So then they get it working, and they cut these dudes loose. They cut Duke Robotics loose. They're like, no, we're good. We're not really interested in your technology anymore. Thanks. We don't need you now. And that's why these guys are going out trying to get funding. And the timing is perfect, because they would be getting their funding together right around the time that their phone calls stopped getting returned, which would be right around the time that they started testing this. First on targets, small targets, things in the proving ground, whatever. I'm going to blow through some of this other stuff, okay? And I'm going to go straight to, I'm going to tell you there were reports, lots of reports. You can go check it out. I've got a thing. Savage, people were sending me stuff and I wanted to play it, but we don't have a ton of time on this, right?
Yeah.
Lots of reports of shots coming from the opposite direction.
Right.
Lots.
This doesn't make sense.
Lots.
Although I did speak to a police officer, and he said that in training, he said you think the bullets would ricochet and bounce up, but what they do is they bounce and then they go across the floor horizontally about a foot to 3 feet off the floor. So he said, like, whenever we're in training, or if we're in a situation and there's a wall behind us, they say back away from the wall at least 5 feet, because all the shooter has to do is shoot the wall and it'll skim across the wall.
Well, yeah, but what people are saying is that they're standing like this.
Yeah.
And that they're hit from this side.
Right, okay, gotcha.
So now, is that potentially a ricochet? Sure, it's potentially a ricochet. But then, if people are getting hit from this side, is that not potentially also a ricochet?
Right.
Right? We've got bullets potentially coming from every direction. Where we have, there's this other story though, and this is what I want to end with, because I think that this puts the nail in the coffin that this is what was happening. And it's this tank story. Go ahead and throw up this tank story. So this is Commissioner calls for security review of jet fuel tanks after Las Vegas Strip shooting. Clark County Commissioner Chris Guillen, I can't even say her name, said Thursday she would seek a security review of the jet fuel tanks targeted Sunday by Las Vegas Strip mass murderer Stephen Paddock. The commission's vice chair said, and a possible candidate for governor next year, made her comments in the wake of a Wednesday Review Journal report that Paddock used his Mandalay Bay hotel room to fire bullets at the circular tanks. So, one round penetrated tank 202, which was partially filled with jet fuel, the airline statement said. The second round was found lodged within the same tank's outer steel shell and did not penetrate. This tank was subsequently evaluated by experts who found no evidence of smoke nor fire. Jones said the tank is being drained and will be re-inspected and repaired. A knowledgeable source said this week that both of the bullets struck near the top of the tank. So what's interesting about this story, I had posted it also on Twitter, that they had crews out there. They had cordoned it off. The FBI... I don't know if it's in this one. Here. Several airplane hangars belonging to prominent corporations are near the tanks, which sit on property owned by the airport. The tanks are operated by Swissport Fueling, the company that runs the jet fuel operations for the airport. The Review Journal reported Wednesday that FBI agents had inspected the tanks and took measurements of the line of fire from Mandalay Bay. A team of forensics experts were brought to Las Vegas from FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. So they brought a team of forensic experts from Washington, D.C. to inspect these tanks, and they're inspecting the line of fire. The FBI agents are inspecting a line of fire to Mandalay Bay for 2 holes in the tanks. I don't think that's what's happening at all. Here's what I think is happening now. One, they want to cordon off the area that's literally the closest thing to Janet Air, because they're examining trajectory, and they're saying bullets are coming. That's what they're examining. They're examining not the line of fire from Mandalay Bay, the line of fire to the people from the highest point. They're thinking, it looks like a sniper was on top of these things because we've got trajectory. As we do the forensics, it looks like the bullets are coming from over here. Well, where could somebody have been? They must have been on top of these tanks. Yeah. Well, we can't tell people that we think there was a shooter on top of the tanks. Tell them the tanks got hit. Tell them the tanks got hit.
Yeah, there's also 2, like, I don't even know what they are. It looks like they started building something
over there.
Yeah, 2 like frames or like I don't even know what it is. They started building something and then they stopped. And then I saw a couple videos where it talks about, like, there is staircases that lead up there, and there is...
No, there are.
Yeah.
There are staircases that lead to the top of the tanks. But what
Not even the tanks, but these structures. It looks like a beam or something, like some kind of...
Who started building them?
Whoever was building whatever they were going to build there, and then they stopped.
So, needless to say, the FBI, in my opinion, what this is the FBI is pretty sure that shots came from over there. But they can't get onto the Janet Air property. And they can't let anybody know that there was a second shooter, because that would jeopardize the investigation, or that they believe there was a second shooter. That would jeopardize the investigation. So there's some other interesting things about this. We showed sort of where that was. Let's go with, so the tank, let's do tank graphic. This is what we're talking about. So you've got these tanks completely on the other side. They're actually, it's 2,000 feet from Mandalay Bay to the fuel tanks. It's 1,000 feet from the fuel tanks down into the Route 91 Harvest Festival. And actually, if you look directly to the north, directly above the fuel tanks, that is the parking lot for Janet Air. That is where I believe the drones were hovering above. That's why I believe that they're out there checking, because they're like, bullets came from here. Bullets came from high up over here. Yeah, they did. They came from next door, from the drone that was hovering right above fucking Janet Air. That's where they came from. But they can't get on there. That's a top secret facility. So let's go with breach. This is the last part, and this is very interesting, because this story just popped up. It was a little bit reported, but then it popped up again today, and I thought that it was very, very strange that this would be there. Mccarran's fence breached by people fleeing Las Vegas Strip shooting. About 300 people fleeing the mass shooting at Mandalay Bay managed to break through the security fence surrounding Mccarran International on Sunday night, wandering onto an active airfield, and brought flights to a halt, airport officials said. The fence was breached in 2 areas as concertgoers from Route 91 Harvest Festival streamed into the airport looking for a place to hide, airport spokesman Christine Cruz said on Tuesday. At around 10:15, hold on, I lost my thing. At around 10:15 Sunday, just 7 minutes after the gunman Stephen Paddock started shooting, the breach prompted airport officials to close 2 parallel runways on the airport's western edge closest to the strip, known as 1L19R and 1R19L. I want you to just take that in as you listen. The shooting is not even over yet, and the airport has closed down the 2 runways closest to Janet Air. They've closed down the runways used by Janet Air, and they've halted flights. The excuse of, we had people on the runway. An hour later, runways 8L26R and 8R26L on the airport's south end were also closed, bringing traffic to a standstill at the nation's 8th busiest airport. The shutdown led to 25 flight diversions on Sunday, with a majority of planes sent to Phoenix. It was unclear how many, but a majority of those planes eventually reached Las Vegas shortly after flights resumed at 12:40 a.m. Monday, Cruz said. Airport personnel guarded the gashed fence until it was repaired at 1:10 a.m. After busting through the security fence, the panic group scattered across the airfield. About 30 of them managed to get as far as Allegiant Air's maintenance facility on the airport's east end, company spokeswoman said. Once inside, they received food, water, blankets, and a chance to charge their cell phones. Clothes were provided to those whose pants or shirts were torn and snagged by a broken security fence. Many others found refuge at facilities closer to the airport's western edge, including Signature Flight Support, which handles some of the private jets passing through Mccarran International. Quote, we provided a facility for anybody who needed a place to stay that night with food, water, and some triage, Signature Flight Support General Manager Rita Carrillo says. After several hours of waiting, the group was placed on an airport shuttle bound for an emergency evacuation center at UNLV's Thomas and Mack. So, I know where all those locations are. I know exactly where all those locations are. What I found interesting, this is a Las Vegas Review-Journal story. The owner of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and this is as far into this part of the story as we're going to go, also owns Sands Corp. And yet Sands Corp is not mentioned in this story as a place where people gather. It's the closest facility. It's actually next door neighbors to Janet Air. And as a matter of fact, it's the only facility from which we actually have photos of people, if you want to show this Sands. This is from the Sands hangar. Photos taken that night. Go next.
Oh, sorry.
It's a slideshow.
Yeah.
Those are the Sands planes. These are the people getting on that described shuttle. Go next. These are more people in the Sands hangar. You can see the Sands planes in the background. Go next. Now, here's what's interesting. These are people heading in front of the tanks in question, so you can see the tanks in relationship to the size of the people. These are people walking towards the Sands hangar, also walking towards Janet Air. Now, what you don't see here is you don't see people running.
Yeah.
These are people walking, being evacuated to that spot. Now, the thing about the fence getting knocked down, I don't even know where the fuck they'd knock that fence down, because there's no area where there's an open fence even close by. And the fact that that they shut down these runways is very, very fucking suspect. So let's show this. Go to route, and we'll show this. I just wanted to show what we're talking about in terms of evacuation route. Okay, so this is the basic thing. Let's go to marked. This is how the people got to Sands. But more important, so you can see the venue, and you can see the line. But more important, you see a line going from Mandalay to the venue. Because if you were going to set somebody up, and if you wanted your person to be able to escape, and you wanted them to be able to escape back to Janet Air, well, we know that groups of people passed right in front of Janet Air because they had to get to Sands. Mm-hmm. And we know that people were at Sands. That's the easiest way to have somebody have an escape route that takes them past Janet. Now, the last part about this, people would ask, people have been asking, come back to this, Christian, and then I'll leave it with this. People have been saying, why would the U.S. use this weapon? Why would they use this weapon on U.S. citizens? Why not use it on a battlefield somewhere? Right? Why not use it in some foreign country?
Yeah.
Two answers. First, if you take this drone from the Area 51 or the Tonopah, the testing range out there, you fly it on your Janet airplane, you bring it out at night, you hover it above the Janet Air parking lot. When you're done, you bring it back, you put it in. You have never left the safety of a top secret facility. It's top secret the whole way through. You didn't have to put it on a military plane. You didn't have to file a flight plan. You didn't have to do shit. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to fly. Maybe they closed them down and a Janet Air flight flew out, but there was a flight that was there were flights going out from 6 o'clock in the morning the next day anyway. Put it back in the belly of one of your planes that never gets checked, that never has anything, that's got, even the flight attendants have top secret clearance, fly it back, along with whoever did this. And then the question is, why target this?
Yeah.
Why target this? And now I want to show you this slideshow. Squares. And I want you to note that all of these photos that I'm showing, you can look down in the bottom at the legend, they're all the same scale, 200 feet. You'll see that 200 feet thing, and then you'll see the scale. This is Tahrir Square. This was basically where the most recent Egyptian revolution, where all of the people, tens of thousands of people, gathered in the square, and where the police and military decided that they were not going to stop the people from getting out of the square, and the revolution, basically they took over, they had a military coup. Next, this is Maidan Square. This is where the most recent Ukrainian revolution happened, where there were snipers who fired at both police and at protesters, and that not knowing who those snipers were and controlling the narrative, the group that now controls Ukraine was able to take over Ukraine. Let's go next. This is Tiananmen Square. This is where there was almost an uprising in China when we were much younger, and the famous pictures of the tanks that rolled over the guy and killed him when the military had to clear the square themselves to prevent China from being taken over. Next. This is Ghazi Park. This is the place that was occupied recently in Turkey, where they were able to, the government was able to clear it out before it looked like they were about to have a revolution also in Turkey. Next. This is Zuccotti Park. This was the location of Occupy Wall Street, where it looked like there could be a popular uprising even in the United States until they cleared it. Next. This is the location of the shooting. If you were going to simulate clearing out a square during a popular uprising where there were tens of thousands of civilians in that square facing, looking at a stage, looking at speakers, you were going to clear it because the police and the military were no longer on your side, and you're a dictator, to prevent yourself from getting overthrown and to clear the square, which is something that dictators have to do. And you were going to have a test of a weapon that could do it. Not only that, but that had all of the things that Maidan had as well, where you could set up people and set up shooters and set up a narrative. This was the perfect test. You could choose the time, you could choose the day, you could do it in your own country where you could control the narrative, because it still is a test. It still is a test, and you have an opportunity to keep it behind a top secret wall. So, you can come back to us. So, where are we?
There we go.
So, we know the facts. I've laid out facts. I've strung some things together that is speculation. But, so I'll do this. I'll tell the story as I believe it happened. I believe Stephen Paddock was chosen. Okay? I believe he was chosen, and I believe that Mary Lou Danley has a connection to Janet Eyre. And I believe that is the connection through which Stephen Paddock was chosen. I believe he was set up. I believe once he was chosen, that a woman was introduced into the mix. I believe that is the mystery woman that they have been reporting that he was with. I believe that his activities, when it relates to his bookings of rooms in Chicago, his bookings of rooms at the Ogden, I believe that that is related to the activity of a 64-year-old man trying to impress and please a young new girlfriend. I believe that those are meant to give him a false sense of security, because they are planning to do it at this other music festival anyway, so you set up these music festivals. I believe that she is involved. I believe that they do not know who she is. They do not know where to find her. Part of the reason that she was picked and that he was picked is because he's a loner, he doesn't communicate with anybody, and he would have been hiding his communications with her.
Right.
I believe that there's a reason why Mary Lou Danley was out of the country. I'm not saying that she is involved. I'm not saying she knew anything about it, but if she is associated with Janet Eyre, if she is an air hostess at Janet Eyre, then Stephen Paddock would have been known because they would have known about him through the background check. They could have chosen anybody related. They have surveillance on it would have been normal for there to be surveillance on her even, and for them to do additional background checks. Additionally, when she came back, because she would have had top secret clearance, they could have spirited her away and prevented Las Vegas Metro PD or the FBI from even being able to talk to her, and that would have just been a dead end. They would have said, shut up, this is it. She's got top secret clearance, there's nothing we can do, and they can't talk about it. And I believe that that's what it is. I don't know if there was actually, if it was this woman who was shooting out of there. I believe there were other accomplices. I do. I believe those are probably the friends, right? That were staying at the Ogden as well, or that were supposed to show up, that she was traveling to these music festivals with.
Yeah, who knows?
This is what I believe the story is. Now, that's stringing some things together, but it's stringing things together out of the things that are actually true. This is not about crisis actors. This is not about anything. The device that I'm talking about exists. The device that I'm talking about has been said by the Department of Defense to be something that they highly value. They put their money where their mouth is. The location is there. There's omissions.
Yeah.
The FBI is investigating in the exact area that they would investigate if they thought that shots were coming from that area. Airport is shut down, even after the shooting stops.
Yeah, this is, I mean, especially for the conspiracies, it's very real. You know, I've seen a lot of people talk.
I mean, it's real.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking about like, oh, this, you know, there's two sides to this. So one, the conspiracy theory people, this is very, very real. Two, for the people that say don't become a conspiracy theorist and say all this stuff, well, it needs to be there because we need to, just like you said with software, the bugs need to be figured out.
Well, and all I'm asking is, so we've presented all of this evidence, right? I'm like, tell the story then.
Yeah.
You tell the story, right? Tell the better story where, because as far as I see it, unless somebody wants to tell me which piece I have not addressed, or is there an additional piece of evidence that you can point to that would refute this? Because to me, it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's very, very fucking obvious to me.
Man, it's crazy.
Now, that's why I actually feel secure in us. You know, we've talked about presenting something, and I had a bit of anxiety. But why I feel secure in presenting this is these people are in the wind and untouchable. We're talking about top secret security clearance. There's nothing they can do. I believe Las Vegas Police Department knows, but what the fuck can they do?
Nobody can do anything.
They'll be prosecuted if they say anything, or if anything gets out about them. It's probably only known at the top level. And they may not even know fully who it is. And top secret clearance is compartmentalized, so even the other people who are working at that facility don't know.
Right.
They wouldn't know either. This is a small group of people who did this. Now, how will I be proven right? It won't be now, but it'll probably be in five or 6 years when they will tell us that these weapons exist. Because they're going to use them. They're going to automate the military. To understand what this weapon means, to understand what it would mean to have this weapon working, it's a replacement of all infantry forces. Mm-hmm. It's to be able to send boots on the ground and not a single American ever gets killed. Because that's what an infantryman is. He's just a weapon. He's a rifle.
Right.
He's the trigger on the rifle. That's what he is. That's all he is. He's nothing without his rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Without his weapon, he's nothing. This is one of the most groundbreaking innovations. It's completely different.
Yeah, it changes everything.
Changes everything. And that's why it's worth killing 60 people. So, we're going to leave it at that, dude.
Yeah.
We still have Ray. We've got time. We're going to go a little bit over today. Let's do this. We're going to skip the ads for everything today. This was a big one. Thank you for going through this with me. Let's just go ahead. We'll go to break, and then we will come directly back, and we'll go to Ray's interview.
shot.